The format of this meeting is a 10-minute speaker, our secretary's announcement, a coffee and snack break, and our main speaker. Our first speaker tonight is David. All right.
Well, my name's David. I'm an alcoholic. And now I know I've really arrived when I've been asked to take the podium here, or invited to do so. And there's some of my friends here that I met when I first came around here in 1987. Half a dozen of them here tonight, so I have no choice but to tell the truth. Well, I guess I'm going to start. And first thing Joe asked me is like, "Dude, where's your suit?" You know. I guess I will have to start at the beginning, right? Someone asked me, he's got 5 years sober now. What do I? He had 6 months sober at the time. How do you know when you're ready to speak? I said, when someone asks you. Where do I start? I said, from the beginning. So I'm going to do that. And 10 minutes. Come on, you guys should know me better than that. You know what? I was born in, first house I lived in was 9 streets away from here. You know, when I was 5 years old, my father, who is not a Mormon, I'm not just a recovering alcoholic, but I'm also a recovering Mormon. My father helped build the Mormon church on 5th and Rowell in 1965, and I guess I did too, because I filled his nail pouch and, cleaned paintbrushes and. But so, my mother was a Mormon, my father was not. I was 5 years old, and this may offend a few folks here, and I hope not. That's not my goal. But I was 5 years old, and they told me in Sunday school that, he's dead and he's coming home soon. And I raised my hand. I said, well, how can that be, if if a person's dead and they're going to come home soon? And they said, David, we'll meet with you after Sunday school. And they told me two things. Maybe 5 years old is a little too early to get a lifelong resentment, but I established one that day. And they told me that, David, you ask too many questions and you're not supposed to think in church. And I wanted to tell him, if I would have thought of it at the time, I would have told him, if you don't pray in my school, I won't think in your church. But, okay, so I didn't want to go to church. I had 3 older brothers, didn't have to go. And 2 years later, I was 7 years old, and Hermosa Beach, HBPD came into our second grade classroom. And, burning a tray, and burning some herb in a tray. It was probably sage, as I look back. And they say, if you're at a party and you smell anything like this, you be sure to tell your parents. And I thought, that smells a lot like my older brother's bedroom. So I immediately went on the search. He caught me right away. He wasn't hiding the incense. So, I knew it wasn't incense I was after, but 4 years later, and as a grown young man at age 11, Donnie No, he was 13, and Tree Fort, and but there was things in my brother's bedroom, like the Schlitz can, with like this much in it, and so I hid it, my very first taste of alcohol, and there's a cigarette butt in the bottom of the can. Mm-hmm. My very first taste of alcohol was laced with a cigarette butt. So there was that much in the Boone's Farm bottle. Ugh. Fired up one of those cool menthols, the stub in the ashtray. What the hell's wrong with these people? But Donnie, we climbed the tree fort. He lived around the corner. The tree's still there, and he pulls out a doobie. And I said, "What is that? One of those incense cigarettes?" He goes, "No, idiot, that's a marijuana." And then he had an ice chest, and he pulled out 2 long neck bottles of Coors. And I said, "Wow, this is a lot better cold, huh?" And he said, "Yeah, And so I remember my first thought that day, still in that tree fort, and I thought this exact quote: "My mother has her God, and now I have found mine." And that same summer, that was just a few months before my 12th birthday, my mother was the area supervisor for the Daily Breeze, and you had to be 12, but I was only 11, and I got a paper route, and I started saving money, and so within a year, the guy, he was 19, and he says, well, $5 for this bag of weed, and I said, what? How much for the whole thing? You can't afford the whole thing. How much is it? So I just, I went and picked it up, and bought the whole thing and became a drug dealer at age 12. And I did that for until I was 27. And you know what? When I got here at age 26, 27, I was a 6 foot 1 inch, 138 pound cocaine addict with that really like Guinness. And and it made me insane, right? And I got, just a few more minutes. So, I knew I needed help. I'm just 138 pounds, and, I was driving around. I got pulled over driving naked with, with my clothes in the back seat at 3 o'clock in the morning, driving one way down the one-way street, which Valley Drive was at that time. The wrong way past the police station, Manhattan Police Station, at 3 o'clock in the morning, with windows wide open, my clothes in the back seat in case I need them later, and the interior light on. And I stopped at McDonald's because they had those longer straws, and I could snort coke off the dashboard. And I'm just stoned, drunk, and stupid. My eyes are this big, and what the cops do when they pull you over at 3 o'clock in the morning, middle of a January, like a Wednesday. I had no shirt on, the flashlight. Where's your clothes? Yeah. Get in that parking lot, put your clothes on, get in that car. And so, a year and a half later, this is in January 86, in July 87, I got a month clean and sober. I pull into the parking lot, that same parking lot, the Manhattan Library there, to attend a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And it's about 1 minute to 8, and there's one parking space open in that lot where I parked a year and a half earlier with, without my clothes on, and I don't drive without my clothes on anymore. And, but this is the easier, softer way to go through life, truly. I wish I had more time, but, for anyone that's new here, we have everybody, there's folks here with over 4 decades sober, in this room right now. And a lot with over 3 decades sober. Everybody, though, walked in from day one. Everybody with 10, 20, 30, 40 years sober, they had one day at one time. So anybody here, that's new, I want to welcome you and let you know that, the highway to hell has an off-ramp and it leads right here. I got what I needed from this fellowship, from this program, I'm not a grandmaster of the 12 commandments, but there are some here because they tell me that they are. Sorry. But what I got here, I got what I needed, and what I needed was relief. I got a break. And if you're new here, still gets to me. If you're new here, give yourself the greatest gift you possibly can. And that's not a new car or new clothes or diamonds or rubies. Just give yourself a break, because you might well deserve it. My 95-year-old dear mother passed away when I had 300 days sober. Oh, well, I had 11 and a half years sober, and I graduated with 4 ounces of wine. 4 ounces of wine took me out, and I was gone. I was a clean and sober dude from 88 to 99. I went to 6 world conventions in those first 8 years. But I stopped going to meetings. I had 4 ounces of wine with my girlfriend, and it set me out on a 20-and-a-half-year run. I did not go to a meeting for 20 and a half years. I came back, I made it back here a little more than 6 years ago now. But when I had 300 days sober, my 95-year-old dear mother passed away, and it was November of 2020, so you know what was, November of 2000. 2020, right? Yeah, COVID, so it's November that year. And I was this is a woman had 43 kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and great-great-grandkids. She helped a lot of people. And when 2 months before she died, she's telling the doctor, I want to see my son David, the only human being she asked for while she was there. And so the doctor calls me, and he knew me pretty well. He said, your mom's wants to talk to you, so we're going to let you in, through the side door. You're going to wear your suit of armor because it's COVID. And I was the last person that she knew that got to talk to her, other than, medical staff. And I told her, Mom, if there's anything I've ever done to you that you really hated, obviously I can't undo this, but perhaps I could keep from repeating this in the future. And she said, the worst thing you ever did to me was mistreat yourself. And I used to walk around, mutter through my own house. Thank you. I used to mutter around, to myself naked through my own house, wondering how much longer can you put yourself through this? This is after I had those 11 years, and I'm out for 20 years. I'm thinking for 3 years, how much longer can you continue to put yourself through this? How much more of this can you take? And I thought about this line from my favorite songwriter of all time, Leonard Cohen, from a song he wrote, I think in 1967, called Teachers. How much more can I put myself through this? How much torture can I endure? And I thought of that line. It said, have I carved enough, my Lord? Child, you are bone. So give yourselves a break. But so the last words my mother said to me, the last words she said to a human being, and that, that she knew, in that conversation was, I'm walking out the door and I looked back and she said, be good to yourself. But real quick, with 30 more seconds, I'll wrap this up. So I have friends I've met here when I first came around in 87. They stayed. But I ran into the wife of a friend of mine who passed away with a number of years sober, and I went to a world convention in Florida with him. I drove there, but he flew because he was in a wheelchair, and I met his wife at a meeting in November, just a few months ago. And I said, hey, her name's Tiny, T-Y-N-E, and I said, hey, Tiny, will you come and give me a 6-year cake in January? She goes, I'd love to. So she's in a wheelchair now, too. It's a little more difficult for her to get around, but I said, it'd be so cool if you came down and helped me, with a few others that are here now, give me a 6-year cake. And she goes, I'll be there. And so she showed up, and she said, I wanted to give you something special, and she says, I painted this rock. Little daisies and some, flowers and a little smiley face or something. And she says, I've never done this before. I never painted one of these for anybody before, but I wanted to make something really special for you. And the last words my mother said to me were, be good to yourself. And I opened up this package, and it said, be good to yourself. So if there's any message that I can leave with you folks, whether you're new, you've been around a while, or you're new here, or in between, be good to yourselves.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Now our main speaker will share on her experience, strength, and hope with us. Please join me in welcoming Marianne.
I was trying to find David. Well, first thing I have to say is I'm Marianne and I'm an alcoholic. I'm also chemically dependent, and I need to be here. My sobriety date is April 10th, 2010. I believe in having sponsors. I've had many throughout the years. And I believe in having a home group. I think it's very important to have some place that you check in every week. Of course, doing the steps with your sponsor and going to a lot of meetings. I guess I'll start at the beginning. That's going back pretty far. It really is. 1981. And before that, I was born in Michigan. And, well, I had a sister. It was my mom, my sister, and my dad. And my dad and my sister were very, very sick. They both had asthma. My dad ended up passing away from that. And my sister had it very bad, too. Somehow she had inherited it from my father. I need to slow down. And anyway, the doctors told her, you need to move to Arizona. That's where she's going to recover and be much, much better. So we moved to Arizona, and my mom didn't want to move to Phoenix because we don't like Phoenix. We like Tucson, Arizona, because it's so much better. So we moved to Tucson, which is the home of the University of Arizona and many other great things. Anyway, so there with my mom and my sister, and it was just the three of us. And my mom, I guess, she was a very strong woman because she, handled that all on her own, and there was she didn't know anybody when we moved to Tucson, Arizona. So I guess she reached out to community, and she made friends, and, she was doing okay. My sister got better, although she was still very, very, very sick. And she was just a very sickly child. She was 1 year and 7 months older than me, and we were very close, almost like twins. And we looked alike, and I just loved her very much. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm speaking in the past tense of my sister, and we'll get into that later. So anyway, one time my mom went to an art show, and she fell in love with the artist at the art show, and she ended up marrying him, and he adopted my sister and I. And that was really nice. And my mom and my dad, he was my dad, and my sister and I lived, happily. And I had a pretty normal upbringing. My parents did not drink. They weren't alcoholics. I mean, they drank socially, but there was no reason for me to go off the deep end like I did. And so anyway, growing up normally, and they gave us everything that, you could ask for, lessons, camps. We didn't have a lot of money. My mom stayed home with us until we were in high school. And my dad worked at the University of Arizona. He was the art director of optical sciences, and pretty famous artist at that time because he was the first one to ever do a glass sculpture for optical sciences, and it's still there in the front of the building to this day. He also did a very beautiful mural for the planetarium. So back in Tucson, I could say that I was kind of a big fish in a small pond because I knew everybody, and growing up there, everybody went to the University of Arizona or worked there, and, the schools and that type of thing. So my sister and I were, like I said, very close. And as we were growing up in the 70s and late 70s, we kind of, she was the first one that discovered, what it was like to start to use drugs and alcohol. And me, being the younger one, wanted to do everything she did. I just worshiped my sister. She was beautiful, cute, popular, and I was the little sister who always wanted to tag along. And she was a dancer, and I had music. I started music lessons, and she was really good at dance, and I was really good at music. And we both had that. Our family was really into the fine arts. And my parents were kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say hippies because that was past their generation, but my mom was, she was really liberal and advanced for her time. She wouldn't let us have Barbies because she said it was not a good image. So we were only allowed to have Skippers. And it was so funny because I always wanted a Barbie, and she's totally against that image. And so it's kind of funny. And but anyway, she was a very strong woman, and both my parents were like heavy smokers. And I can remember their friends coming over and having their drinks and their smoking, and I just thought that was really cool. And I heard David talking a little bit, about somebody coming into his school and showing him the what it was supposed to be marijuana, but I can remember them showing us these drug movies when I was in school about what we weren't supposed to do. Guess what? All I wanted to do was do that when they showed it to me. All I wanted to do was do that. And, something was wrong with me, You know, I'm not going to say spiritually, morally, I'm not sure which one it was. It was everything, but, and a lot of it was the times that we grew up in. But in 6th grade, we had this thing where some of the kids were being bad, and we would faint people. And I don't know if anybody knows what that is. But even back in 6th grade, I wanted to be oblivious. I wanted somebody to faint me. And we really got into it. And then I found out we got in trouble for doing it. We would go out in the far part of the school. And what it was is somebody would hold on to you, and you would lose, they would like hold you really tight, and you would lose consciousness. And that was my first really experience with, like, you know, being under the influence of something. And I just liked the feeling. And even, you know, when I drank, I liked the feeling of being totally oblivious. It was never about wanting to be where I was. It was about wanting to be out of where I was and oblivious. But I was very spiritual, so I first started with, you know, weed. So I first thought it was really spiritual, and we would, like, get into all this psychedelic stuff, and my sister and I had always said, we're never, ever going to get into drinking. That's for, you know, losers. We're just going to do pot. But as time went on, that changed, and I can remember going to music camp. NAU, Northern Arizona University Music Camp was a big deal. And, you know, I guess I was pretty talented because I took up music and I did really well. And I went to that music camp, and the girl I was rooming with, she was my best friend. On the 3rd year that we went there, we went like 3 years in a row. And it was really fun because you got to go 2 weeks without your parents and live in the dorms. And the first year I went, I was just out of 6th grade going into 7th, all by myself. And my music teacher was there, and she kind of kept an eye on me, but it was really fun. And then the next year I went, I met this girl, and we even scored weed there. And we almost got busted and sent home, but we flushed it all down the toilet before they could find it. And that was such a close call, and there were many, many, many close calls like that where I just evaded getting in trouble by just, who knows, the grace of God. But yeah, that summer was really intense. And that was the summer, I'd say summer of 8th grade. The next year, the summer of 8th grade, was when things really started rolling. And, you know, I thought I'd get up here, and some people thought I wouldn't have anything to say, and I'd be really nervous, but guess what? I really do like to talk, and I especially like to talk about myself. So now you know. Summer of 8th grade, we did stuff like, well, first tripping on acid, and there was this place in Tucson called Hippie Hill. And so you could hitchhike to Hippie Hill, which I was afraid to do, but I guess my sister went with some of her friends. And that night, we were going to try it for the first time. And we had some, you know, friends, guys, coming over, and parents were out. We were going to drink, and we were going to do acid. And they went to Hippie Hill, and that was this place at Himmel Park where you could go and buy anything that you wanted. And I forget what year that was. But anyway, they came back, and they had this stuff. And I love danger. I just love the idea of not knowing what was going to happen. But I did not know that that stuff was going to last all night long. And I had a music lesson the next day, and I had to go. But anyway, I was up all night doing that stuff, and my sister and my best friend were, you know, doing things with some people that were at that party at my house. And that was my first experience with that. And that, you know, I loved it so much that I just decided to do it again and again. And then there were, you know, many other psychedelics and parties. But I went into high school, and my best friend was, I noticed she was on a different track than me because I wanted to ditch school and get wasted and do pot and go buy beer and go, you know, get high in the Arroyos near Tucson High. And that was my high school, very famous high school in Tucson because it's near the University of Arizona. And you can just walk off campus and go to 4th Avenue and all these other places. And nobody knows what I'm talking about. But that's what happens when you guys get up here and start telling me all these places around here that I have no idea what. But guess what? Where I went was really cool because it was near the U of A. And if you ever go to Tucson, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway. So anyway, she didn't want to ditch school and do that. And I said, why not? And she said, well, I don't want to be high when I go to my class. And I was like, why? Why? I mean, what I do, I want to be really high when I go to that class. And she started not wanting to do that. And I started to realize we were kind of growing apart. My friends got, more and more, instead of hanging around with the jocks, I started hanging around more with the freaks. And that's kind of the way that went. But I was always kind of a high roller freak. I never was, down and out or any of that stuff. So, yeah, it's really interesting. But, and I have to say that there were a lot of fun times. There were. But as I've heard other people say, it starts out with fun, then it's fun with problems, and then it's problems. And that's about basically sums it up. Anyway, on to college, and complete failure because I could not get up in the morning after going out to the bars the other night and doing Boilermakers and, doing all the stuff that I was doing. But still thought I was really great and everything. And but, I had to drop out of college, and I tried different jobs, and, the boyfriends kept getting more and more into drugs to the point where, by that time, my greatest desire, first I had wanted to be a groupie, or a musician, a rock musician, because I was already a musician, and I wanted to be a rock musician. But that wasn't quite happening because I was getting, too drunk and messed up all the time. So then I decided to be a groupie. That would be the next best thing. I'd get my into music that way. And so, I was really into music and bands, and I got a job at the Tucson Convention Center as an usherette, and tried to, I saw every concert, saw every band that ever came in there, and that was really fun. But then I ended up on the track to, harder things. And, it always starts out pretty innocently, I have to say. And I think it happened that way with most of my friends. And then it just seemed, for me, it just seemed to roll, the ball was rolling to a point where I alienated a lot of people. But my last boyfriend, before I went into treatment, inherited $80,000, well, he didn't inherit. He won a settlement of $80,000. And for all my girlfriends and all my friends, our highest desire was always to find somebody that could buy as much cocaine as possible. I'll just say it. That was like the dream. And, for women, I think it's a little different, women in the program, because women are always conscious about their weight. And a lot of women I knew would drink alcohol and not eat. And, they would do coke and not eat. And they had different priorities than some of the men. But anyway, he had that, and that actually happened to me. And it was serious business because we ended up getting a scale and a safe, and that was my life for a while, and I loved it, but I got tired of it. And while the whole while that was all going on, of course, I was drinking all the time. And what I found out, and I hope I can talk about the cocaine, because I said I was chemically dependent, and also an alcoholic. I got tired of it. I got tired of staying up all night and people talking. Because remember, I like oblivion. I don't like static, and I don't like being nervous and all that. I liked it because it suppressed my appetite, and I could drink more, but I did not like the guys staying up all night. And another thing it does to your body, if you're a guy, I think you catch my drift. It's not the greatest thing I hate that. And I hated that. I ended up breaking up with that guy and finding other friends. And and I decided I don't really like cocaine that much. But I do like alcohol. I really do like alcohol. And of course, I stuck with that. But when I was about 22, I got my first DUI. And it was coming home from Chance's. And that time, I had been drinking all day, and I had no idea that, I could ever get a DUI, but got in my car, and was going to drive to my boyfriend's house, and I had been with my sister, and I got pulled over, and I ended up getting a ticket for unsafe lane changing, of course, driving under the influence, speeding, and I think there was I think there was another one, but anyway, they took me to jail, and I spent the night in jail. And I was too wasted to even know what was happening. So, but the next day I knew. And my parents did not come get me out. They were called, but they did not come get me. They got me the next day. And I got out that time, and I thought, well, of course I started drinking right away. And some people, it was funny, some people from AA came to visit me in jail. And I was like, you have got to be kidding. I am not going to quit drinking. Not very smart, not very smart. And so guess what happened a year later? Same bar, coming home, I got another DUI. But this time, they revoked my license. And it's a lot different trying to be cool when you can't drive anymore. I could only walk, get a ride from somebody. And a lot of my friends by the time I was 22, were getting married and graduating from college and having, pretty good jobs. But that wasn't happening for me, and I didn't know why. And so I ended up moving back with my parents, but I couldn't get a good job, and I, for some reason, was drinking like 2 pints of vodka a day. Yeah, I could not go a day without drinking. And this is another one of my problems, is the way I drank. My friend, who was an alcoholic too, she ended up coming in the program with me. She wouldn't drink the whole next day after we had an, exposition. But me, I would say, what's wrong with you? Just drink some more and you'll feel fine. And that's what I did. But she didn't do that. That's what I did. Of course, just have a shot. You'll feel great. And I did for a long time. But anyways, so I was living with my parents, trying to work. But, I wasn't really going out or having any fun. I was just drinking. And I could not get one day without drinking. It was just horrible. And I got sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I knew something was wrong. And I told my parents, you know what, I think I'm an alcoholic. I think I need to go into treatment. I really was at my rock bottom. I had no job, no education, college dropout, no money, and I couldn't drive. And that is just pretty low. And so my parents were pretty strict. They always told me, if you're going to live here, you need to have a job or be going to school. I was doing none of those things. And so I knew that my days living with them were limited. So I ended up, they put me in a place called West Center. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but it was one of the first treatment centers in Tucson at that time. And I went into West Center, and I had no idea what was going to happen. I had no idea they were going to pull AA crap on me. That's the first thing they did the next day. But the first couple of nights I was in there, I met some really nice people. And one of the guys I met, who I knew from some other people, said, hey, we didn't know that we weren't supposed to smoke weed anymore. And he said, hey, you want to go out to the desert and smoke weed? And I said, sure. They only said we had to quit drinking. And so we actually went from the treatment center out there to smoke weed. And I came back in, and I thought nothing was wrong. And they didn't do anything. And the whole time I was smoking cigarettes too, but that's a whole other story. So the next day we found out that we had to quit everything. They told us you cannot have any substances, and no marijuana, no nothing. And I thought, oh my God, this is really serious. It's really serious. So I can't smoke weed anymore. I can't ever drink again. What am I going to do? I was between a rock and a hard place, and I could not imagine my life ever without drinking again. I really thought that was the end. And I didn't know how to live without alcohol. I did not know. I didn't think you could. And my sister was not in treatment. She was still doing it. And we were so close that our relationship was kind of symbiotic, that whatever she did, I would do. And whatever I would do, she would do. But she supported me in going into treatment. She even came to visit me. And she didn't drink the way I did anyway. I drank more than she did. She did other things. But getting back to the treatment, it was really good. I stayed in there for 30 days. Some of the people didn't stay, and some of the people didn't keep in AA, but I ended up loving it. And what they told me in there was you can do anything you want to do if you stay sober, anything. And I was 23, and I thought, anything I want to do? Well, that's great, because I really want to do something. And I ended up, coming out of there and going back with my parents, and I had to get rides to meetings, and I stayed sober, and I decided to go back to college. And what did I decide to do? Well, they told me I could do anything, and that's really true. You can do anything as long as you stay sober. And if you're young, my God, the possibilities are just endless. And the only thing that was really holding me back was the fact that I couldn't stop drinking. And I stopped everything else. I stopped the drugs, and I stopped, the marijuana, and the last thing to go was the alcohol. That was the thing that I held on to most tightly. And so, anyway, I came out of there and was going to meetings. I was going back to college. And the thing that I had always really been talented at was music. And I had put it down when I was about 18, and I'm a musician. I play the violin and viola. And I thought, I can never go back to this, but the people at AA told me I can do whatever I want to do. So I took out, I got another instrument. I got a viola and a violin, and I started playing again and taking some lessons. And I worked on it really hard. And when you're sober, you can work on things really hard because you're not held down by anything. And I would practice all the time, and I auditioned to go into the College of Music at the University of Arizona, and I got in. And I decided to major in music education. And so I did that, and it was really good. I loved it, and I still love it. And I graduated. The whole meantime, though, my story's really long, you guys. I got to get into my sober part. This is the sober part. I got 5 years, and I ended up marrying another alcoholic in the program and having a child, and he went back out. And I got a divorce and moved back in with my mom. And it was an abusive relationship, and a lot of times I think, well, when I got sober, I didn't realize a lot of my character flaws when I was doing my steps. I didn't realize that I had a tendency to be with abusive men. I didn't know that, but it came out. And a lot of things will come out if you do the steps over and over again. You'll realize patterns that you have. And being with people, being in relationships with people that wanted to boss me around, and I let them. And just letting other people be in charge of my life. And so anyway, getting the divorce and being with my child, that was really happy and wonderful, and my mom was very supportive. And a lot of things happened in that period. After about 4 years, I decided that I wasn't getting remarried and having the relationships I wanted. And things weren't really going the way I wanted. I was kind of lonely and wasn't meeting people in the program. And I had a child now, and I wasn't really, what I really wanted was to get remarried and be in, that, and have another child. But it wasn't happening, so I decided to start going to bars again. And I stopped going to meetings because I thought, this isn't really working for me. Although I had gotten 5 years plus 4 years of sobriety. So when my daughter was 4, I started on my path to a relapse. And I ended up relapsing from the time she was 4 until she was 18. And during that whole time, though, I held down teaching jobs, and it was a binge period. It was a periodic drinker. I would have long terms of sobriety, and then I would do it again. And I would never stop doing it completely, though, just long enough to, make everybody not mad at me and that. And the last time that I did it, I hurt a lot of people in that time. I hurt a lot of people. My mom, my daughter especially. But I'm going to get to my second recovery very soon. My time is running out. I knew that I would not have long enough to talk because I like to talk. I didn't want to tell anybody that, but anyway, I told you. And so, I did a lot of things where my daughter saw me drinking, and those are things that I really regret most of my sobriety. And I should regret my mother, but what I really regret was my daughter, because I can't take those things back. And the hurt in her eyes was something that, the guilt made me want to drink again. Just thinking that I had done that made me want to drink again. And I went through some other things in the program that I really wished that not in the program, during that time, that I really wished I would have reached out, because things would have been so much better for me if I would have just been able to do the steps and be in the program. But I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain from my drinking and hurting. And I'll briefly say, when my sister died, that I didn't believe that anybody could really help me. I was so horrible that just, like I said, the pain. And the pain was so bad that I thought I was entitled to be on Xanax, and I was entitled to be on some other things. And, you know, it just got really bad. And the same thing happened when, I'll fast forward to the last 3 years of teaching. I had to take early retirement because my mom got really, really ill. And I would get phone calls home saying, your mom fell down and she needs help, and I'd have to go home. So I just ended up saying, I'm going to take care of her. And I'll go back to teaching when I can, you know. And so I took care of her, and the whole time, though, I was self-medicating a lot. And, you know, again, the pain was so horrible, seeing my mother go through this. And I didn't really have anybody else. My daughter was going to college. You know, I had no husband, nor the relatives, no father. And so it was all me. And then she died, and I had to sell her house and do everything all myself and pack up all my stuff. And then another thing that happened was we ended up losing the house, and I had to move into an apartment, and it was just horrible. My daughter moved to LA. That's the whole reason I'm out here. She moved here, and she said, bye, Mom, I'm going to go to law school. I got a scholarship to Loyola. And I said, but you don't know anybody there. And she said, well, I'm going to go there. And so I was left all by myself. I mean, I was in a relationship, but I still felt all by myself. And that was when I went back into the program. And when I went back in, I was so miserable. I hated everybody in there. I really, really was so mad that I had to go back there. I was wearing sunglasses. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't see how people could live without alcohol. I thought it was really weird. You know, you see the people on TV, you see the people in the movies say, oh, I got to have a drink. This is too much. Watch any movie and you'll see people say that. And then they light up a cigarette. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? I can't be like those people anymore. I'm somebody that's just sober. What, oh God. And luckily though, I stuck it out, and I had some great sponsors. And I managed to stay with it and get off all the, and it's funny, I'll tell you a story. When my daughter would call me, she says that I would pass out mid-sentence talking to her. And when she went to law school, those 3 years, she almost didn't talk to me at all. And I never thought we'd have a relationship again. I really didn't think it was in the cards. And so I just kept going to meetings and doing that and getting involved. And there was a great meeting there called Smoke-Free Nooners, where it's a well-known meeting in Tucson that a lot of celebrities go to Sierra Tucson. And anyway, I ended up making that my home group. First, I went to the 5:30, which was really nice because I could hit it right after work. And they told me this time though, this is raw right here. They told me you can't, you have to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I was still working at that time, right then. And I couldn't go to treatment because I had to work. So I remember driving on the freeway, detoxing from alcohol, feeling sick, and calling my sponsor and saying, when am I not going to feel sick anymore? I was going through hardcore alcohol withdrawal and feeling so nauseous and having to go to work and then go to a meeting after work. That pissed me off, but I did it. And I'm glad I did it, and here I am. And my daughter ended up talking to me again. And we have a relationship now. She ended up calling me or saying, hey, Mom, guess what? And I said, what? And she held up this little pink shirt. And I was like, oh my God. And I was still living in Tucson. And she said, Mom, I really want you to come out here and be with us. And I had retired. I was doing some substituting, and I got my teaching certificate renewed, but I hadn't gone back full time yet. And I thought, you know what, this is fate. I'm going to go out there. But it was 2020. It was during COVID. And so I moved out here, and I left all my support in Tucson, and it wasn't too good, I have to tell you. There were no meetings going on, but just these Zoom meetings, and that did not cut it for me. And I kind of gutted it out for a while, and I still had my sponsor in Tucson, although she died last year. So I was hanging on to my sobriety by a bare thread. I don't know how I did it. I don't recommend this for anybody. I should have tried harder to go to Zoom meetings. I tried. But, so I was really happy when meetings opened up again. Thank God we got the vaccine. Thank God we could go to meetings again. I started going to where is it? What is that club? Hermosa? Yeah, I went there. I thought all the people were really weird. We were sitting outside. Nobody knew me, and that made me really mad that why didn't they know how great I was and how popular I was in Tucson? This place sucks. They're all strange. And then I started coming here. I really loved this meeting, and it was full when I first came. All these people were sitting, every chair was filled, every chair, and I loved everybody in this meeting, but I was so scared because nobody knew me, and I wasn't popular. So I would sit in the back, and I don't know if Miko remembers this, but I kept coming. I told her, one time I got mad because nobody talked to me that much. I said, I'm going to give you another chance. Like it was your responsibility to come to me. And she said, okay, I don't know what you were thinking about me. But I came back, and I kept coming back, and I'm glad I did, because I ended up meeting the most wonderful people here that I have met in my sobriety. And now I finally feel like I'm at home because, you guys are just great. And, the meetings changed. It changed, and then it changed again. And I'm sure it's going to go through other changes, but it doesn't matter as long as I keep coming back. And change is really hard for me to accept. I hate it. But after, I go through some wrestling, and I don't like it, I don't want to change, I accept it. And I haven't talked about doing the steps, but I do all the steps, and I've done them several times with a sponsor. But the step I hit the most is probably 10, 11, 12. And I do the mini 4-step a lot. And they're such a great toolkit to live my life. I can't live without them. I've been to therapy, and it didn't help. They just gave me Librium, and I got messed up on that. I've been to psychiatrists. That didn't help. This helps. And the toolkit. There's a design for living here that you can't get anywhere else. And my buddies are here. My people are here. You guys understand me. You understand that my 3 favorite songs are 1 bourbon, 1 scotch, 1 beer, beer drinkers and hellraisers, and what's the other one? Oh, I Have a Drink on Me by AC/DC. So that's the way I live my life. And, I'm glad you guys understand that. I love music. I'm a musician. I was classically trained, and I've been playing in some community orchestras here, Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra and Beach Cities. Right now I'm a little busy with my grandkids. They're wonderful, and I'm in their life today. Thank God I get to be in their life. My daughter actually lets me be in their life, and I never thought that would happen. That's a miracle, and it's a miracle I'm still sober today, because I like to be oblivious. And how do I get oblivious today? There's other ways you can get there. You can get there by meditating. You can get there by working out. You can get there by, music still does it for me. And I never thought I could hear music and be sober, but I can. And I still love it. And I can listen to the music I love today and not want to drink. And that's a miracle. That's a miracle. That's what I really wanted, to be able to return to the things I loved and not have to drink. So, yeah, I found you guys in the steps, but the mini 4-step will get you through so many difficult times. You get upset and somebody makes you mad. I'm mad at, because it affects me. What's my part? Do that, and you will feel better. And then call somebody. If they're not there, keep calling. Don't let somebody stop you from, getting the help that you need. And going to a meeting always helps. And they always told me, meeting makers make it. And they do. The minute I stop going to meetings is when I'm going to I don't want to think about that, so I'm going to keep going. Am I out of time? 5 more minutes? Wow, see, doing good on that. I don't really have much else to say other than I'm really looking forward to living here. I've been out here 5 years now, and I'm kind of getting used to things. And it's different, but I like it. And I've got my family and my 2 grandkids, and they're really cute. And I'm glad I get to be with them. My grandson is 3. His name is Macaulay, and my granddaughter's name is 5, and her name is Scarlett. And my daughter lets me be with him all the time and drive him around. She trusts me with that. Somebody who got 2 DUIs and drank in the car with her. But I have shown her. And my family hasn't always been supportive of my sobriety. I talked to her today, and I said, you know what? You could have come tonight. And she said, Mom, I don't want to go to these meetings. I feel uncomfortable there. I was like, well, some people's families do come. But I can't, that's her thing. And if she doesn't want to come, that's fine. I understand. She doesn't have to come to all my stuff, but she's supportive of me in many other ways. And we're very, very close. And so I would like to say that you can get through just anything in this program. I wish I had reached out when my mom died and when my sister died. I wish I had been in it more because I went through so much pain, unbearable pain. And it could have been made easier if I would have just, come here and talked to people about it. So anyways, if you're a newcomer, I hope I didn't turn you off by telling you all these stories about old dinosaur rock and, getting oblivious in the late 70s and the 80s and stuff like that. Because when you're young today, I know things are different. I know there are different stuff and things that you guys deal with. But the basic quality of not being able to stop doing something is still there. And this program can help you with any problem you have in life. And when I say I'm chemically dependent and I need to be here, I say this program has helped me with just about every aspect of my life. So if you're new, please keep coming back. And thanks for letting me be of service.